This is my YouTube presentation over Dr. Cho Su's article, Reinventing Female Identity, A Brief History of Korean Buddhist Nuns. Who is Dr. Cho Su? She's the Associate Professor at the Department of Philosophy at Seoul National University. She received her PhD in Buddhist Studies from the University of California, Berkeley. She founded the International Center for Korean Studies at Seoul University in 2007. Her main areas of research are Korean Buddhist thought and women in Buddhism. Currently, she's the president of the Korean Society of Buddhist Studies and is the director of the Institute for Gender Research at Seoul National University. Dr. Cho's main statement: she acknowledges and researched the presence of women in Buddhism over the past 2,000 years. This starts from the 3rd century through the Three Kingdoms to Koryo, to Chosen, to colonial, post-colonial, and modern. She argues that researchers and historians should acknowledge the role women played in Korean Buddhism over the historical time. She describes the role of laywomen and nuns, which were present throughout the entire history of Buddhism, but they're often overlooked and not mentioned. Her methodology: most of her references are from other scholarly works by professors and scholars of many different disciplines. These disciplines include Buddhism as a whole, Buddhism in Korea, gender studies in Korea, gender studies in Buddhism. She does allude to primary sources. The main primary source she alludes to is a primary source written by a monk who traveled around East Asia, and in this he describes a few bhikkhuni ordinations. She also references historical memorabilia written by monks. All of these memorabilias were commissioned by a king in the 12th century. The Samguk Yusa is more about legends and folklore. There are some historical accounts and records in that one as well, but the Samguk Sagi is the main historically oriented memorabilia. Terminology: so the word sunim follows a monk's name. It just means monk, so it's just their title. The difference between bhikkhu and bhikkhuni: bhikkhu is the word for monk and bhikkhuni is the word for nun. Filial piety is a Confucian kind of idea about respecting your parents, ancestors, and elders. A hermitage is the direct definition of a hermitage is like a lair or a nest, but I think in religious terms, it's like a place of solitude for religion to occur. Wadu practice is a type of Buddhist meditation that falls under Zen. Proselytization is a way of recruiting or converting one to a faith or institution. She begins her paper describing the historical Buddha and gender equality and how Shakyamuni kind of interacted with that. She describes the ordination of Shakyamuni's maternal aunt and foster mother, Mahaprajapati. There's lots of speculation over that, but also during this ordination, he ordained 500 other women. The requirements, one of the extra requirements for this ordination are the 8 chief rules of respect to monks. The speculation with this comes in with, first of all, the validity of the account of the historical Buddha. There is an account saying that he does hesitate 3 times during this entire ordination process of these women. The other question is about the 8 chief rules of respect. Because these are extra rules given to nuns, it kind of brings into a question of inferiority, that nuns need extra rules and more rules than monks. So take that as you will. The roots of Buddhism in Korea. So the presence of women in Buddhism and Korea, they go simultaneously, they go hand in hand. Women have always been a part of Buddhism in Korea. Korea receives Buddhism from China in the late 4th century. So like I said, women have always been in Buddhism in Korea. So we know that there was a group of nuns established simultaneously as monks at the same time. There are also accounts of female lay practitioners and obviously Buddhist nuns. And And Buddhism throughout in Korea as a whole was embraced gradually throughout the three kingdoms from north to south. Yes. And obviously Buddhism could have been in Korea obviously far before 372 CE. The Three Kingdoms period in Korea. This is the first recorded appearance of a Buddhist nun. Her name is Lady Saw. All we know about her is that she did help and aid a monk with missionary work. So therefore, in definitive terms, she was a nun. Members of the royal family also, there is an account of a king and queen, King Popun, who they both renounce their throne. He becomes a monk and she becomes a nun. This was obviously before the official decree allowing and confirming the ordination of women. That comes a few years later in 544 CE. And we also do have record of traveling of Bhikkhuni between Japan and Silla and the unified Silla state. So we know that Bhikkhuni from the unified Silla traveled to Japan. When they arrive in Japan, they meet other Buddhist nuns, but the Buddhist nuns in Japan at the time weren't as well established or as advanced as Korea. There is evidence of a leadership role within the community of Bhikkhunis, but nothing past that. The Koryo dynasty. This is when Buddhism was instated as the state religion of the dynasty. Buddhism emerges as a more organized and secularized type of religion. Buddhist officials even do have say in clerical affairs of state. Nuns obviously were still excluded from clerical and leadership positions at this time, but there are record of Bhikkhuni ordinations. We do know that they occurred. Buddhist women and Bhikkhuni still remain anonymous, but their presence is almost slightly more exaggerated in this period. There is one record of a female master as well, but not much past that. We also do know that during this time period, these women from Korea were were called to court over in Yuan, China. And we do know that those women of the royal court did continue to give aid and financial support to the Buddhist faith in Korea. The Chosen Dynasty. So this was obviously the removal of Buddhism as a state religion, and not even a removal, but kind of an abolition of Buddhism from any modern society at the time. This is when Neo-Confucianism comes in and becomes like the main secular political ideas of Korea as a whole. But we still do find Buddhism in private practice, like private faith practice. There is a lot more evidence, obviously, of it being practiced among literati, but some of the main oppressions of Buddhism in general were that monasteries could not be built near towns, so they moved up into the mountains, the rural mountains. Clergy members could not enter the capital, and they had to cover their faces whenever they were out. Now, Buddhist women were already oppressed before, so then now when the entire religion is oppressed, then Buddhist women also receive even more oppressions. So this is a big oppression of Buddhist women. But even in this time, we do see increased patronage of monasteries and temples and artwork from women. There is an account of the women in the royal family commissioning paintings, statues, building and repairing pagodas, commissioning Buddhist scriptures to be written into Korean. And we do know that there was actually a royal nunnery within the royal palace. Obviously, it was closed in the 16th century by a man who didn't see it fit anymore. Also, in this time, we do see new forms of Buddhist practice emerge because Buddhism was pushed out into rural areas and became practiced kind of behind closed doors. We do see it mixed with ideas of shamanism, or they do call it mountain Buddhism, because it kind of mixes with all the other outcast religions at the time. So that's where we see new forms emerge. Now, during the colonial period, we do see a welcome back of Buddhist practice in monasteries in the public. Female clergy members at this time have been rebuilding monasteries, but now they move to rebuild the monasteries in more populated areas, and we do see them create their own communities within them. We do have accounts of two very well-known Buddhist teachers. We see Muriori Papui. She became a nun at the age of 14. She studied under Mangong Sunim, and she actually reaches enlightenment by the age of 30 years old. She's his own master. And there are accounts of her male peers like acknowledging her grace and her enlightenment, which is very cool. We also do have a record of Minsong. She is just known as being a great practitioner of Zen, so it's very good to see that. This is also a time when women are able to emerge more as writers and intellectuals and artists, so they're gaining their respect gradually. Now we move to contemporary women in Buddhism, obviously with contemporary ideas of the time in Korea as of now. We obviously see immense growth in status and respect for women in all facets of society. Buddhist nuns had been rebuilding monasteries for the past century, so more than that. So they no longer really have to focus on that. They do still, but now they have time to focus on doctrine, on meditation facilities, more specialized things to just enrich their entire community. We do know that they do take more involvement in modern issues and current affairs right now, with welfare programs, schooling, development of Buddhist media for younger generations. So they're kind of looking to convert and recruit and spread their religion and their faith. We do see them emerge with having more leadership roles and becoming abbots and all of that. So the reasons for this great development would be the unifying power of gender that women had had in Korea for the past 2,000 years. They've been pushed to the side, so obviously they make a very strong community within themselves. They do obviously gain more economic power in general. They do have an equality within the monasteries based on the jobs and the type of masters and teachings and meditations, and just the overall rise of women in Korea and the world around them. So my thoughts on Dr. Jones's paper, I thought she was very effective in giving a good sense of what occurred in Korea and in Buddhist society. I do like that she does have smaller accounts of individual masters, and I like how she has the accounts of the monks speaking on those masters and how they felt. So I thought that was very cool. I do wish, my critique would be that I do wish that she did include more things like that. Like what were the monks thinking? What were they doing? How does that compare to the Buddhist nuns? How did they interact? Obviously that's asking for a lot from research and historical records, but I think that would be very interesting. And there's my bibliography. Thank you.